Hello and welcome to the Stillwater Area High School Advanced Algebra Learning Target Podcast. What a great way to learn. This podcast will cover Learning Target 2D and Learning Target 2E. They deal with the correlation coefficient. 2D, I can use a correlation coefficient to determine the validity of a prediction. And 2E, I can calculate a correlation coefficient for a set of data using technology. Now remember, a correlation coefficient occurs when there appears to be or is a relationship between two variables. That will happen when the points in a scatter plot, as you can see, tend to cluster about a line. It can happen in a positive direction, where you would have a tendency to have positive slope. That can happen, and they can cluster around a line that's going in a negative direction for a negative slope. And you can have a random set of points that is very difficult to tell which way the line would go, either positive or negative, so we have no reliable correlation. Again, positive correlation, clustering in a positive slope, negative correlation in a negative slope, and no reliable correlation, which is a random scatter plot. Moving on, when you calculate an R value, that R value will fall between two values on a number line. -1 and 1, and +1. In the middle is 0. The value for R cannot be anything else. It can range for any numbers in between -1 and 1. So with notation we could say R is greater than or equal to -1, and R will always be less than or equal to +1. It can be nothing else. Now here are three examples of a correlation coefficient for a set of data. When the points line up in exactly a straight line, it is a perfect negative correlation. Slope is negative. Here there is no correlation. The random points, notice the R value is 0. And the last one, a perfect positive correlation. This time the slope is greater than 0. So therefore they line up in a straight line. Your next concept is being able to graph or calculate a correlation coefficient for a given set of data. I'm going to show you on the TI-84 Smart View Plus calculator, which is the same as the TI-83 or 84 that you have with you today. First step we must do, as we learned yesterday, is put the data into the calculator. That's going to be done by hitting Stat and Edit and beginning to enter my data in to the calculator. -1 for 11 and 18. Now I can arrow over and put in the Y values. 4, 9, 22, and 30. 4 points, 4 X values, 4 Y values. There's my set of data. You can see that it matches indeed with the graph. And now I need to calculate the R value. To do that, I'm going to go to my Stat menu. This time I'm going to move over to Calculate. I'm going to move down, and I actually have to calculate a linear regression. So I'm going down to number 4. I'm going to tell the calculator where I've put my data for X, comma, whoops, it should be L2, L1 and L2. I can hit enter, and notice the bottom calculation is my R value, which in this case is quite awesome. Alright, the R value is always located at the bottom, and in this case R is positive 0.993, which means this is a positive, strong correlation. Right? Very good. Next, we have to be able to interpret our R value and decide how valid is our correlation. We're going to use a combination of two words to describe every correlation. Now, every correlation can be described using two words. Our choices are strong versus weak and positive versus negative, which leads us to four possible outcomes: strong positive, weak positive, strong negative, and weak negative. Notice we can combine those. So, remember, closer to 1 or negative 1 is strong. Closer to 0 is weak. Let's look at the examples below. First one, R equals 0.04, is close to 0, and it's positive, so this would be a weak positive correlation. Right? Next one, negative 0.69, has to be negative. Always a good place to start. And we'd call this one a strong. And finally, we got a strong positive. Very good. Awesome. We're almost done. Hey, by the way, happy Tropical Day. Finally, we should be able to get good at matching graphs with their correlations. Notice here, out of these 5 graphs, we actually have, if I look at the slope, remember, I have 2 positives and 3 negative correlations. Let's start with the positive. As I go around the graph, that one I know is negative, positive, negative, negative, no, negative, yes. Alright, so I'm going to start with the positive values. I have 2, whoops, I made a mistake, but I caught it. This bottom graph actually is going uphill, so it should be positive. So as I look at these below, the 2 positive values are 0.85 and 0.17. 0.85 is closer to 1, so it should be the more clustered data points. 0.7 is further away from 1 and should be more random. We do the same thing with the negative values. The most clustered graph around a line is right there, negative 0.94. The next clustered graph is in the top left, R equals negative 0.54. And the third best is down here, R equals negative 0.33. That concludes the Learning Target podcast for 2DE and 2D and 2E. Sorry about that. This podcast will be posted on the YouTube channel. So if you need help with these two learning targets at a future date, feel free to dial up that channel. You have been a great crowd today, and I thank you, and happy learning on the Stillwater Area High School Math YouTube channel.